Hello, I am Sae-Ju. I run a global healthcare startup. You know, I dropped out of university when I was 25, and just 5 days after finishing my service in the military, I came straight to New York. And now, this year, marks exactly 10 years. I think the foundation of my story of coming to the US was probably a spirit full of rebellion. I think many of you here today, especially the students, probably share some common ground with me. In my middle and high school days, my only ever wish was to get into the university I wanted. That was my goal. Of course, my parents also put in tremendous effort, creating an environment where every single minute and second was set up for me to study well. I'm grateful because my father was a doctor. I also loved and respected him very much and deeply, so I didn't really think much about it. I just thought I should become a doctor because my father looked so cool and his job seemed incredibly rewarding. So I studied hard, but it just wasn't working out. Once, at a family dinner, my parents didn't look so happy. So what I thought at that moment was that I had done my parents a great wrong. Why am I like this, even though they devoted everything? Is this how it's going to be? So I started to feel troubled. I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do. I felt like I wouldn't be able to get into medical school. Even choosing a major was now based on my grades. So what it felt like was, you know how when beef gets graded according to the quality of the marbling? That's how it felt. So I thought, I'm just like beef being sold wholesale, getting assigned a score. Then I thought about what would happen even if I did get accepted somewhere, and before I knew it, time just flew by. While I was going through a really rough period like this, an event happened that ended up changing my life. My father, who was very famous as a cancer specialist, was diagnosed with cancer himself. He got lung cancer and passed away when I was 21. So after I got a call from my mother in Jeolla province, I went there right away and spent the remaining 9 months focusing on being with my father, a man who, in my eyes, is still the greatest and most remarkable person. His life was truly a story of success. But since my father passed away at 52, he left us at a very young age. So I ended up being with him until the very end, as a healthy man deteriorated physically and eventually took his last breath, and through that I started to reflect on life. I was 21 years old, so I was pretty young. You know those questions like, what is life? Why am I here, right? I found myself asking questions that you almost feel you shouldn't dare to ask. But on the other hand, you know all those things that make you wonder and feel lost? All those questions I was struggling with actually became clearer, and it became an opportunity for me to make up my mind. The reason was, first, through the death of my father, I started to seriously contemplate what life is, which was something I had never thought about so deeply before. So I began to think seriously about life and death. Second, my father loved me so much and passed away. So just imagine how much he must have wanted me to do well. Even the wild grass in the world has life and must have a reason for being born. So I thought that I, too, must have a reason for being born. I was curious about it. And I wanted to show something to my father, but I wondered how I could do that. So the third thought I had was that this time I needed to discover my own talent. Because of these reasons, my wandering started to, become somewhat clearly resolved, and I decided that I would go to America. That's how I ended up coming to New York. So, 5 days after being discharged from the military, I took a one-way flight and came to New York. That was 10 years ago. This year marks the 10th anniversary. But I had to learn English and also study the American culture. And I realized that there weren't so many opportunities. Because people spoke very quickly and I didn't have a chance to follow, every moment felt like an English listening test, and it always felt like my head was going to burst in the morning and afternoon. Because every single moment was like a listening exam. It got so bad that even the cashier at Walmart didn't want to ring me up. She found it bothersome to explain things to me. I once even got hit by a water balloon by some high school students. I still don't understand the reason why I got hit. Because back then I couldn't say something back to them, so I just said thank you, like an idiot. I thought they were being friendly, but later they just threw a water balloon at me and left. So I thought, wow, all sorts of things really do happen. And that's when I decided to approach things differently. No matter how unpleasantly someone looked at me, I would always just smile. I made a big effort to keep smiling and to create an atmosphere where I could join in the conversation. At first, I couldn't really speak well, so I figured I should at least practice listening. But it's more likely that someone would invite me into the conversation when I respond well, right? So at first I smiled a lot. Then I made sure to maintain eye contact and say things like, "Yes, man, that's great." And this is what turned out to be an incredibly effective skill for me. After that, I studied a lot about how to smoothly interject. Even if I couldn't fully understand what was being said, I would throw in things like, that's right. Yes. Is that right? Yes. I used these a lot. And if I sensed that the person didn't really like me, I would say, that's correct, very precisely in the middle of the conversation. When I would say things like, precisely, that's right, people would really start listening to me. And as I kept adding these kinds of responses, the conversation would actually flow. That's how it really worked for me. So people would start saying that Sae-Ju is truly an excellent communicator with a really good heart. Maybe it's because I'm from the East, but people would say, I listen well and understand their feelings. Because of that, I started getting invited to a lot of things. It's funny, right? A very young psychology professor at Princeton once said that the foundation of psychology is listening. He even said it's something you could teach a chimpanzee to do. Back in Korea, I was more of a talker, but after coming to the US, I became a master of attentive listening. For real, that's how it all started. And as I kept doing that, I started to feel more at home. I became more comfortable talking with, as we say, Westerners or Americans. As I started to overcome my anxiety a bit, I realized I needed to do something. When I came to the US, as I mentioned earlier, I was going through a really intense period of reflection and looking for new opportunities. So I had a strong willingness to take on challenges. I thought about it a lot. With all this positive energy, what should I do right now? I decided that I should start a business, that I should become an entrepreneur. And since I wasn't able to go to medical school, I realized that although I couldn't help many people with their health and welfare as a doctor, I could use technology to contribute to public health and welfare through technological means, what we call population health. I had a vague, idealistic thought about how I could help as many people as possible, but the conviction and belief behind that idea resonated very strongly with me. That's because I had seen my father's example so many times. My father would even skip lunch while working. Even so, he always felt regretful because there were always sick people waiting. With so many people suffering and that he was constantly treating them, he would wonder, won't there be any possible way for them to prevent being sick? And from that, I decided I should go into healthcare. I made up my mind and took a step into business. But you remember the English learning method I mentioned earlier? I couldn't run a business just with, yes, and that's correct. And I needed money for a proper start. You know, what they call seed funding. I needed money. And in order to get funding, I had to meet with professional investment institutions like venture capitalists and talk to them. But I couldn't even get a meeting with investors. Someone like me, with no track record or background, I had nothing at all, right? So I spent a really long time practicing. I kept asking around, trying to figure out how to do it. And I would earnestly ask for help getting introduced to important people and wealthy individuals. And I would passionately explain my business, even in broken Konglish, but it just wasn't working out. And when I was pitching the business, I could see their expressions change in just about 2 minutes. So I could see in their faces that these people were already thinking of me weirdly, seemingly wanting to end the meeting as quick as possible. And honestly, it was really embarrassing. I felt so ashamed and wanted to crawl into a hole, thinking, I came here with big dreams, but what am I even doing? I was losing all my self-esteem. It was truly an emotional roller coaster. My emotions would fluctuate so much, sometimes within just 5 minutes, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like going from a volcano to complete chaos. I even felt like I wanted to die. So I thought about it a lot and realized that English was the problem. I decided I needed to get better at English. Around that time, I happened to watch lectures by CEOs and founders of major tech companies that had achieved global success, not just in the US, but worldwide. Or I would see their presentations at conferences. Then I saw that their English wasn't that great. From what I saw, I thought I could set that as my goal and reach that level too. Their pronunciation was so clear and easy to understand, also slow. So then, how did these people manage to succeed? What I realized was that it was their insight. How these people were able to develop their own views on this healthcare industry. They talk about how to achieve great success through certain solutions. So their English didn't really matter from the audience's perspective. So I changed my goal. The new direction I set for myself was to become someone with the best insight in the healthcare industry sector. And as I changed my goal, of course, I still worked hard at sales, but instead of focusing on speaking completely native and comfortably, I decided it was more important to have sharp insight and to think things through intensely so that I could speak more intelligently than anyone else in this field. Once I shifted my mindset, I felt less pressure. And that's how I decided to try. Though I didn't receive any investment for 2.5 years, I recorded myself every time I gave a presentation during that period. Then I would come back, analyze it again, and ask for feedback. I would say, please, don't just turn me down nicely. If you think it's not going to work, tell me the reason why. Most people don't say no outright during the meeting. Because everyone is polite and considerate, they don't say those things. So I asked them the opposite. I'd say, just tell me one thing that makes you think our company has no potential. By saying this, I was able to collect all that data. It's really embarrassing because I'm asking for and reserving the precious time of important people to have a conversation, but in that moment, I'm basically confirming that I'm being foolish. But since I had already burned my bridges, there was no way back for me. I would ask, then fix things. As I kept doing that, I got used to it. You get used to presenting, and then our business model really improves. We call our business model a business plan. Every time we revise it, the version number goes up. And after about 2 years, it reached 1,000. 1,000 times. Can you imagine? And I mean, 1,000 times on a single document, not on any other ones. 1,000 revision makes the level of completion incredibly high. About 2.5 years later, we received our first investment simultaneously in the US and Korea. And honestly, I thought it would happen at that time. Because in my heart, have any of you seen the movie Silmido? Just send me there. I'll come back with the enemy leader's head. That was exactly how I felt. So when it came to mobile healthcare in this field, my confidence wasn't baseless at all. Rather, I was properly prepared. We even had prototypes that we could demonstrate built from our technology. Regarding the industry as well, we put in the legwork and gained a lot of in-depth knowledge. With all of that, do you know the most important thing is people started to recognize the sincerity and the 2.5 years of dedicated effort we poured our hearts into. So with this, things started to move along very smoothly. That's how the foundation of our company was established. Investors started to come in, and along with funding, many talented people from a global scale began to join us. If I let feelings of inferiority or thoughts like I'm not good enough take over, I'll forever stay a minority. So, through the society's standards, my English still isn't good enough, and I always lack something somewhere. There's really nowhere to hide. The only place to return to is the embrace of my parents. But that could never be an option. On the contrary, I put in a lot of effort, and in the end I realized that the one who evaluates and sets the standards for myself is me, not anyone else. So, as I worked hard and built up my basic foundation, at some point my mindset suddenly shifted, and my perspective on the world really expanded. Once I gained that confidence, even when I met foreigners and talked with them, I could see in that moment that my message, beliefs, and vision were truly resonating with them. Then, dealing with investors became easier. Talented people started to join us. From Germany and also from Croatia and even from Iceland. People from companies I had never even heard of before and countries where I've never been to were interested. We met, had thorough discussions, and I explained that after 2.5 years of deliberation, we created this. And that through mobile healthcare, we can achieve great success worldwide and help heal many people. It actually makes sense. That's how the company grew step by step. Now we have about 120 people spread all over the world. We started in the United States, and now our headquarters, technology development, and sales are all based in New York. We're expanding into Korea, Japan, and Germany as well. So what have I learned? As I mentioned before, the first thing was that it took me nearly 10 years to discover my own talent. But now that I've found my talent, I'm really eager to work even harder. And I feel a sense of curiosity and a bit of confidence about wanting to excel even more in this field. The second thing is about doing business targeting the global market. If my goal had only been to speak English like the native speakers here, whom I really admire, then although I did put effort into learning English, the pressure to be perfect might have actually prevented me from showcasing the talents I already had. Instead, I became an expert in healthcare, specifically mobile healthcare. That's why I am recognized in this field, and that's also why we are now operating across 3 continents. So I don't have any unnecessary competitors or monsters lurking in my mind. My only concern is, how can we create technology that enables healthcare to actually care for people's health, rather than just treating them when they're sick? How can we develop such a service? Those are what I only think of. Hence my concentration improves. And as I show such strengths through conversations, I've now become part of the so-called board list. Whether it's the US, South America, or anywhere else, it doesn't matter. We just go wherever the service is needed. And when we go, we get a good response. And when we launch the service there, it does well. So my concentration continues to improve and the business gains momentum. And because this mission resonates so strongly, people who believe in it keep coming to our company. Investors come to us, business partners too, even from hospitals. They'd say, how can we contribute to health and welfare? Let's work together. Even the government comes to us. The government would ask, how can we help our citizens become healthier? And we are a company that thinks about nothing but this every day. And we are a group of talented people who focus solely on this. As I continue doing this, I keep moving forward in line with my convictions. And since I've discovered my own talent, I am now at a stage where I am not just honing it, but taking it even further. Up to this point, I've been sharing with you what I felt after coming to the United States. There are many times when I feel extremely lonely while running a business. When I'm traveling for business, or as our company grows and we face even bigger challenges, there are moments that I really miss my father. I miss him. And now I have become a father of 2 sons myself. So I often wonder what he would say. My father was a medical professional, and I'm also in healthcare. The service we're currently targeting is about diabetes, also high blood pressure, also nephrology. All the doctors are going to be involved, and we're working together to help. So I'm really curious about what he would have said. So every time I think of my father, it makes me either wonder or feel my heart ache. Just as much as I love my father, I want to discover more and make the most of the talents he gave me. So I only keep telling myself that I need to work hard so I can reach the top. I came to the United States out of a sense of rebellion, and now it's been 10 years. I no longer feel like I was being treated like a wholesaler for beef. However, now, I am truly grateful for having the opportunity to pursue my dreams, and I feel a great sense of pride and fulfillment working together with talented people from 10 different countries. I had to drop out of university because it wasn't a system I created, but this challenge is something I chose myself. And I believe that all the hardships we experience on this journey are, in a way, part of the learning process. So in this challenge, there is no dropping out. Thank you for listening. To me, public diplomacy means youth entrepreneurship. The reason is that if you create a service and it benefits many people, users will naturally become curious about the team that planned and developed that service. That's why I believe youth entrepreneurship is an excellent way for outstanding services created in Korea to be shared and communicated with the world.